had the privilege of working as a children's book illustrator for the past 4 years. It's been such an adventure. I have loved every single minute of it, but it did come with its challenges, which I wanted to talk about in this video because it is a reflection video that I'm making. I wouldn't want anyone entering into this type of field or aspiring for this type of profession simply for like the finances, for the look, or just for like the title, when honestly it comes with a lot more baggage and a lot of people would than I would like to admit. And so in this video, I just wanted to talk about some of my challenges, some of the things that I've learned, some of the things that haven't been beneficial, and things that actually hurt me as a person or as a creator, as an artist, and just some advice that I'd give anybody aspiring or anyone who is also out there as a creative, who's an artist, who's just working in art, creating art and making things that the public consumes on a daily basis, and hoping that, you know, you're doing good work and not work that's just like meaningless. Because honestly, there's so many. Let's just get into the video. My name is Shalene. I am a professional illustrator. For the past 4 years, I've had the privilege of working on several children's books, and it's really taught me a lot about myself and about the creative process and what publishing can be like. And with the introduction of AI and seeing how different agencies handle that and different clients handle that, there's been a lot of adjustment that I've seen. But I wanted to talk about the first point that really got to me as an illustrator. Things that were like things Something that's a hard truth is that you can get really isolated. Isolation is honestly the name of the game. And if you're doing this full time, I would say get a lot of friends. I mean, like, maintain your friendships, because you have to navigate a special place where you have free time and you don't. You run a business, but it's also kind of not really regarded in the same way as a 9 to 5 that most people will recognize. And when you're free, you might find that a lot of people aren't free, and your hours aren't anyone else's hours. Like, you make your own hours, but it's not the same, because depending on your creative workflow, you really have to look into yourself and say, like, can I realistically get this much work done within a month, within 2 weeks, within X amount of time, to make your deadline and to kind of give yourself a living wage, because you end up having to kind of isolate yourself in order to get things done. And you don't, unless you're working in like a co-working space with other people. And I think one of the beauties of being an artist, you know, you can do this part-time, you can do this freelance at your own pace. But once you get into the realm of actually like taking on so much work that you feel like, oh, I'd love to dedicate more time to this, or if you simply have the free time to dedicate to a project, you'll find that it's actually really isolating. And being an artist is a type of work where you're not always interested in involving a whole bunch of people into your process, but you might need that privacy in order to get to that place to get your work done. So you have to always consider yourself and where are you going to be in a month, and trying to find ways to incorporate other people into your life. I think I mentioned this in a different video where I said I wanted to be in a place where I could have my schedule and have work fit that. But sometimes, you know, the balance doesn't always equal out in the end and figure itself out. So you end up having to make those sacrifices. And I feel like isolation is one of them. I tend to be an introvert, but I find I do function quite well in being high functioning and working with other people and socializing when I need to. However, on the term of isolation, I feel like there's a space where sometimes you're just not understood, and it seeps into your clients, it seeps into your agent, it seeps into everything. Because as you can see, like, look around me, I'm in an office, I work alone, I work from home. And unless you live in a multi-generational home where you have multiple people around you all throughout the day, like for myself, I live with my husband here, and there's no one else here. Like, when he's not here, like, I'm alone. I work I work from home and I have to make an effort to socialize and call my sister and catch up with my friends and check in with people. And although that's great and fine, there are times where I find like my work actually drags me down. And I feel like I don't want to socialize. I don't want to have that, that outlet. But I feel like I have to make that extra push compared to when I had other jobs in the past where I was already in a social environment. So whether or not I felt like I socialized that day, I was always in a process or in a practice of expressing myself, talking to people, dealing with the public, dealing with students, and having that my social battery being exhausted. I feel like that was an outlet, and that's something I feel like isn't talked about enough. Like a lot of artists would be like, I'd love to just be home and be able to focus on my craft all day, but you still have to live, right? Like you can't just work forever, or you can't simply just be in a mindset where you're only creating. You have to live and give yourself an opportunity to put your experiences into something so you can share it with the world too, right? So isolation, I would definitely say, is a big one. Over the past 4 years, I definitely feel like I've done a lot of introspection as a person, which I feel like this job and this career has afforded me. However, I also feel like there's levels to it. Like I'm an artist, I feel like I'm a businesswoman. I like as an entrepreneur kind of thing. I like those two things don't always mesh well together in other people's minds. So I feel like I come off as really privileged, and I could understand that if that's the case. Like there's a lot of factors in my life that afford me the opportunity to be in a position to create art in the capacity that I do, even if at all. Like so I understand that, but I feel as though just saying I'm an artist kind of isolates you from other people. And I guess that leads me into my next point. So, my next point is that people don't really respect artists as much as they say they do. And I have found this even working in publishing. Like I've had some amazing art directors and amazing clients, and then I've had people who are just like, just make the thing, like just do it. I've had people who have actually vocalized to me, the job you were doing before wasn't even doing this for you. Like you should be grateful. You should be thankful that you did art. But I'm just like, I worked hard before too. When I was a teacher and working in that capacity overseas, and when I got my linguistics degree and my certification in TESOL so I can teach English in Canada and overseas, I worked really hard for that. And someone that I knew said to me like, oh, you should just be thankful that you're an artist now because like this was your dream. But I'm like, but that was my dream too. And I feel like people have this dual mentality where they're super excited and happy that you're an artist, but they're also like, you're not allowed to complain, and you work from home and you have support, and it becomes like it's like all these things stacked against you. But it's like I worked really hard for those things, and none of these things were just given to me. I genuinely remember the late nights. I remember putting the portfolio together. I remember all the rejections. I remember all the people who told me no. I can enjoy the fruit of my labor and my hard work, but that doesn't always translate to other people, because art really is a form of, it's a medium and it's an experience that is something that people buy out of pleasure. It's not a necessity to some people. But like for me, creating art keeps me alive. Like I feel like it's a part of my being, it's a part of who I am. When I stop drawing, I'm wondering like, what am I doing? Like my purpose is connected to creating art in some form or capacity, whether it's talking about it, consuming it, engaging with it, and just doing something in regards to that. So I don't agree with some people who are telling me that I'm privileged, because like I also feel like I was privileged to be able to even go to university at all when I consider where my parents come from. I have had to seriously evaluate where my values were, what's important to me, and not allow the opinions of other people to shroud and cloud all of the hard work that I put in and the things that I want to do that I haven't even accomplished yet. And it kind of reminds me like when I like 7 years ago, 8, 10 years ago, actually. I remember telling my, I guess, accountant at the time, like I was studying to, I was still in my linguistics program, but I was telling her, I want to become an illustrator and I want to make art. And she told me, she told me flat out, you're wasting your time. My dad tried to do that and he totally failed and it ruined our family. And like that, it sucked for her as a daughter growing up in that environment where like her, I guess that was just her experience. So she's like, you're wasting your time. Like, get into something that'll actually do something for you. And what's so sad about that is that to her, I was wasting my time. But to me, I was like, this is me pursuing my linguistics degree, but also pursuing art on the side and trying to see what happens was keeping me alive. Like, it's not a question, and I'm not even gonna speak on behalf of like what her familial experience was like, because I know that must be traumatizing for someone else, but I'm not you and I'm not your dad and I'm Shalene. Like, we got to get that straight first. So that's the bottom line. And if God gives me the opportunity to go forth and enjoy my season of being an artist, I'm going to enjoy it and see what happens. And I've had that opportunity. I said I wanted to do linguistics. I completed it. I went overseas. I went to South Korea. It was so amazing. And I did those things that I wanted. And they weren't a lot of the things that I've tried, and including doing illustration, turned out to be so opposite, or like they gave me mixed feelings. And it's just, why does it have to be like that for art? Where as like if I were to go into medicine, whether it was nursing, because being a Black woman, if I were to go into a nursing or anything in that regard, I'd be respected in my community for doing something that's like noble. One of the last things you could do is become an artist. You should be establishing yourself for your next generation and doing something that's meaningful and something that can provide for your family. And you have all these great opportunities. What are you doing with them? What about the people back home? Like, when I was back home, I couldn't do X, Y, and Z. That's why you have to go further than me. That whole rhetoric can really cloud your judgment about what you actually want for yourself versus what like the collective says is good. And so I will be validated if I do those things. I already knew I wasn't going to go into medicine. I knew I wasn't going to be an engineer. I definitely knew I wasn't going into law. If anything, I would have gone into psychology, maybe therapy, and that's definitely a route I feel like is still open for me if I want to explore. However, that's just not the way it worked out. And it was so interesting seeing how like when I was going into teaching, I was very respected, but people were saying, it's not the end all. Some people were saying, it's not the end all be all. So I still had to find out how can I continue to elevate there. Like, I wasn't enough doing that. And like being an artist, there's a level where no, like this is still for fun, where some people look at you and it's just like, you're just privileged. You're just married. You come from a big family. It's just for now. And it's so, the thing about that is like, who cares if it's just for now? Like, why can't I have my moment? And so with my second point being, art is something that not a lot of people respect. They just expect you to get it done. They don't understand the heart, the emotion, the part of you that it is. Like, it's my identity. And not a lot of people know how to articulate that and stand up for that and say like, no, it can be profitable, it can be meaningful, it does impact the world, it is important, it is a necessity. Like, in hard times, music, art, dance, all these forms of expression are even more necessary, because the mundane things that we do every day, like a cog in the system, some people, that's like their calling to do that, but that is not everyone. Some of us are just working to survive, and I get that, because honestly, this career has felt like that for me. And so it's interesting that there's so much shade going into pursuing art, even if it's not even like your thing. Like, you could just be in a creative space and people will see you as privileged. People will see you as like, hey, at least you're doing what you love. And it's like, yeah, I get that, but it can still be hard. It can still be challenging. I definitely find myself in this space where I have to advocate for my worth and my value because artistry is something I've spent my entire life working on. Like, I've been creating art since I was in grade school. And I remember how serious I was back then, and then how serious I was in middle school, and how dedicated I was in high school, and the turmoil I had to go through just to be able to say, like, now, like, I'm an illustrator, I'm an artist, I'm a professional, I do this and I work with people and I can help you. This is a problem I solve. This is a problem I can solve and I will solve, and this is what I'm going to do. That triggers people and it inspires the creatives, and I love that. But for some people, it makes them feel like what you're doing isn't it's not a need in society, and I get that. But for you, you see it that way. When I'm sick and I'm unwell, I don't want to just be surrounded by the hospital. I don't want to just be surrounded by people who are just going to throw medicine and knowledge and books at me that are strictly about what I'm going through. Like, I actually want to still experience goodness and happiness and joy and be inspired. Or I can experience my sadness through art. Like, that is a need too, because art helps us express things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to say or to feel, or to say, like, this is me. That is so priceless, and I that's my whole point. I've grown over the last 4 years seeing how, like, in certain spaces I've been disrespected, in certain spaces I've been, like, admonished and being like, wow, thank you for the work that you're doing. And at the end of the day, I have to look at myself and be like, what I'm doing is meaningful because I know what it means to me, and I've seen how it impacts other people. And that has to be enough for me. Because honestly, there are so many people out there that are like, it's just a drawing. It's just a piece of paper. It's just digital art. Like, go do something more meaningful with your time. You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what I'm doing matters and it's necessary. And not just because it's for children, like because I do children's books, because you might not be someone who creates art that's like dedicated to kids or dedicated to something that feels like, oh, it's meaningful in the circle of life. You might just love shoes. Like colorful shoes. And what's wrong with that? That inspires you, and that inspires certain people. There's a specific set of people in this world that are inspired by what you do, that will love what you do, and that will like celebrate and champion that. And why can't that be enough? So that's what I have to say about, people not respecting art because they feel like it's not important. But it is. It's very important. Art is expression. Art is your voice. Art is your vision, and bringing it into the world for other people to see, to watch, to observe, to challenge. But it's for you to leave behind. So, yeah. Another hard truth that I have is that, honestly, I don't think all agents or agencies, even when they have your best interest at heart, you still have to have your best interest at heart. Like, they try their best, but they're still a business. Like, I learned this the hard way over the past 2 years, 3 years. I know that's like the most of like my illustration career, but like it's been a progressive journey where like where I started was like out of loyalty, and then where I ended was like, no, this is just business. Like, honestly, this is real life. This is just business. And it sucks. It sucks because being an artist, where I've grown up and how I found myself, there was a place where dropping out of art school, I had this like intrinsic knowing in myself that wasn't even true, that like I'm not good enough. Like, something just told me I'm not gonna make it. Like, everyone else, I could like see like they're gonna do such a great thing. They're gonna go far. This person is like, I could see their message, I could see their artistic voice, but I could never see that for myself. And there's layers to it, because back in 2012, 2013, I feel like the scene for going to art shows and going to studios, and that culture that I feel like I was more tapped into because I was an art student, of just going out and seeing art shows. So I felt so much more in tune with the reality that like, oh my gosh, I need to see myself hosting shows and gallery art shows and hosting my art and bringing people in. But I never was able to finish a collection of work that I felt proud of and said like, hey, this embodies this emotion in me. I wasn't there yet. And because I wasn't there yet, I counted myself out in so many ways. So there's like this thought that we have as artists that is like, oh, we need a manager, we need an agent, someone that can sell your art for us because, as an artist, we want to work on our craft and we want to do the thing and just focus on making work. But that is one of the biggest lies I feel like I've been sold as a creator, as an artist from grade school. And it's really impeccable and unfortunate how sad and how destructive this thought can be, because as an artist, what I learned over the past 10 to 15 years is that we as individuals are truly entrepreneurs as a whole. Like our ideas, like we as an individual, we are the change and we are the thing that people want to see. And it serves us so well to be able to market that and to talk about our work in a way that the public is able to consume and to say like, hey, I see myself in that. Us not gaining those skills actually kneecaps us so much in the foot, especially starting out. So now I'm going to connect that into my later experiences of having an agent, working with an agency in regards to publishing, because there was something that I learned recently, at least in the past year and a half. I realized the importance of knowing your worth and knowing your value. And it's funny, like there's levels of like unveiling what this actually means and what this does for you as an individual, as a creative. And so when I found myself in 2020 creating art again, being displaced from my job and being home and saying like, I'm going to pour into doing my portfolio and art and just engaging with my community. You as my community are the people who consume it, were the ones who pushed me in front of the right people and helped my art circulate. That was the process that I actually loved and that I fell in love with. But the place where agencies and agents and managers and people get in the way of that for artists is that they see your, it's like they can see your God-given light and your God-given potential inside of their business. But it's not, in every season of your life, they're not thinking about where you see yourself inside of your business, like inside of your art and inside of your career projection. I feel as though even though agents, managers, agencies mean well and they hear out like, hey, what is your vision? What is your plan? Like, where do you see yourself going? You're only as good as the market is able to sell you in their avenue. And if you, like what I did was I get overwhelmed really easily. So when I focus on a thing, I do that really well, but I can't focus on all the things at the same time. And that's where I thought, that's where an agent would come in. However, if you're not actually still continuing the habits that got you to where you were, you know what? Like I said to myself, I had it coming, because the overwhelm and the processing and the place where I found myself, where I said, I just have to get this done instead of staying in the place that was working for me. That I feel like no artist should ever sacrifice that. And when your agencies change and when your managers, their lives change, respectively, the businesses change too. And whether you know it or not, your life is going to be affected. And so I've had that experience where I've seen different agencies change and different handlings and working with different people and realizing, oh my gosh, which goes back to my first point, as isolated as I am working on my projects and being at home, I can't disconnect myself from the reality that I'm functioning inside of a business, I'm working inside of a system, and I still have to look out for my future and knowing what everyone else is doing. And so I guess what I'm really getting at is that your business is your business, and that's your baby, that's your life, that's your future. Hold that so firm, and don't let your agent, your manager, your agency, the reputation your agency has, don't let that change the way you see your value. Joining yourself with another business, another brand, another publishing company that does really well is a really good thing, where it's like, oh, you can attach your name to certain things, but remember, you're the one who had enough value in the first place that they wanted to be associated with you. And I feel like this is a lesson that I'm reminding myself in recent months, because why would people want to work with me? Like, I recently had the opportunity to work with Disney, and I was just like, I don't feel like, I'm surprised this happened. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity. I don't feel like I'm that person yet, but they want to be associated with me too. So it's just like, why can't I look at that as value? Why would I forfeit that to my agency and say like, oh, my agent did this for me? Yes, they did, but they helped bring me into a space, and I respect that, and and I'm always going to be thankful for that. But I also have to remember that the hard work that I put into getting my work done in the first place, and learning and making my work beautiful and enjoying the process, is what made my agency feel like my work was worthy enough to put in front of certain people. So I can't undercut myself, and I can't undercut that fact that the potential people see inside of my art going certain places and affecting people is marketable. It's measurable, it's meaningful, and it's valuable. That's where I'm saying, your agency, your manager, your agent is great to have that help, but always have a handle and understanding of what your value is. It doesn't have to be something that your agent is attributing to you. It's not something that someone else is saying, yeah, you finally made it. No, you made it. Like, just start there. You made it because you're making it. And you know that because people have told you that. And if you haven't got that confirmation, people aren't enjoying your art, start making collections, start making pieces, start making bodies of work that you feel something about. And start sharing it. People don't have to love your work. It just has to get a reaction out of people. It just has to say something. It has to be thought provoking. Set a goal and just accomplish that, because people, honestly, I feel like we get so caught up with our work being likable, where I feel like it's the reaction that we get out of people that is more meaningful and as a whole than saying like, oh, people love my work. It's like, no, can you create a predictable result? Like, people always hate my work because it makes them think. People always get curious around my work. Is curiosity your thing? Is color your thing? Is sadness your thing? Like, do you understand mourning? Do you understand grief? Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I love your work because it's so positive. Someone can say, I don't like your work because of how it challenges me to think, but I like that this is a place I can come to in order to receive that type of information. You know what I mean? So like, there's nuance to the conversation. It's not always about making stuff that everybody's gonna love. Sometimes it's just about making things that make people react a certain way, and being able to know that I can provoke this feeling out of people. That's the skill. That's something you want to understand. You don't want to be the only person in the room out of all these people who are selling your art and not knowing, what makes my art tick. Why do people even like my art? You don't want to be lost, and you don't want to give that knowledge away to other people to sell, because that's when you start to not understand the value of what it is that you do and how you make people feel. And then you can start putting price tags on your worth based on where you see yourself and where you want to go. And you can decide your future better, because it's your work. You control it. You decide it. You understand it, and you can replicate it on your own. So even if you say, I'm overwhelmed and I can't do all this by myself, that's why I need an agent. You can find an agent who's aligned with your values if you know what your values are. So that's that point. The last thing, so the next thing I want to talk about is how absolutely nerve-wracking it can be being an illustrator, just being an artist and a creative person. I feel that I'm supposed to be so much more, but also not at the same time. I feel like I need to get everything right. I have to always be on the up and up. I have to always make sense. I have to always have a big thing coming. I have to always justify what I'm doing. And there's no room for breaks, even when I want a break. And the illusion of like, as long as I'm working, I'm valuable. Like, one of my agents actually said that one time, and I was like, that's actually terrible advice. Being busy isn't a reflection of success. Because I can look back now and say, like, there were some books I kind of wish I didn't work on, because it would have given me the mental space to find out where I was. And hearing so much of the feedback being like, oh, everybody loves your work, and, that's great. Let's get you on the next project. But if you're not actually growing, do people actually want that work? Are you still making... I was still making artwork from a place of the past where I knew psychologically, like in my mind, like I'm in a different place. I'm actually so much further than that. But because my work was... I wasn't updating my work. It's reflecting an old version of me that was good for that time. And so the thing about just being an artist is like it causes so much like internal reflection. Like, you have to reflect. You have to look at yourself. You have to look at your work honestly. You have to get feedback. You have to internalize. You have to externalize. You need to experience life. You need to consume work as well. You need to look at other forms of art. You need to live. Oh my gosh. When I was teaching, it was overwhelming and super hard. I can't even lie. Like, that's a different type of evil that I feel like I was really tried with. However, even though when I went home I could turn it off, I knew there was parameters to it. But like, being an artist is a part of who I am. And I feel like anybody who does something from their heart could understand this feeling where it's like, no, this is not that it defines me, but I want to put stuff out there that I'm proud of. And because of that, it's not just work. Sometimes it's actually like, no, this is me. Like, this is my grief. This is my sadness. This is my joy right now. Like, and you want to represent that well. And you want people to understand that. And you want people to see it, or you don't want people to see it. And it's not like being an artist as a whole, going into doing art actually can be pain. It's so weird to say, but it can actually be pain. And it stems into family, it stems into your career, it stems into your identity, it stems into faith. I feel like for me, it's like art, there's me, like there's who God made, and then there's like art as like a vehicle of like expressing myself, one of the vehicles that I express myself through. But I value it so much because I love it so much. And so I hope that people understand, even in my intimate circles, that it's not always easy, and it's not always fun. Sometimes it's just work, and sometimes it's just like, this isn't where I saw myself. This is not where I'm going. I want to do something else. And the big thing, honestly, that I think I'm describing is that like the dream changes. That's a big one. The dream changes sometimes. And where I was in 2019 and 2018, where I said, oh, I want to get into illustration. I really want to take this seriously. And where I am now, I'm like, I don't, like, the title doesn't mean as much to me anymore. It's the memories that I'm making along the way. And am I actually listening to myself? Am I actually making art that matters to me and that is sending the message that is from my heart? And not just like, because there are people I know who will function in publishing and children's books and stuff, but like, hey, this is their life's work. But I, like, as I've gone through my stages and accomplished like my life goals, I realized that after some honest reflection, it's like, oh my gosh, my dream changed. Like, this actually isn't what I want. And how do I get out of this? Or how do I adjust this? Where do I go from here? What if what I'm trying to strive for next isn't what I want either? And of course, there's the honest reflection, because I read a lot and I do a lot of research, and I listen to a whole bunch of podcasts, and I love introspection. So I understand it's about the journey, but that confusion of having to decide again, what are you going to do? And then there's also the adulthood that comes with it, or like, but it has to make money. It has to pay for itself. It has to, if I want to do this long term in a way that would be financially profitable, I have to think about those things. And I know this isn't something everyone has to do, but that's something I want to do. So I put myself in that position to really reflect in that way, because not all of the art that I make I want to be for the world to consume, but as a part of my vision for my future, I want to make things that help people. So that's an important question for me. How do I continue to do that in a way that's in a way that I can continue doing it? I have to make it profitable and I have to make it meaningful. So how do I do that? So yes, that are those are some of the things that I think about that aren't talked about. And they aren't even things that you can kind of tackle straight off the bat, like, hey, don't isolate yourself. Make sure you have friends, because the reality is, like the first point, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how life is going to hit you. You don't know how you're going to change. Sometimes you're just learning about yourself, and that's just the hard part. So maybe we are the hard part. Maybe I'm the hard part. I'm the challenge. The art is easy, but I'm the challenge because I'm confronting myself every time I draw. So that brings me to the conclusion, which is like, just as a whole, being a creative person, I feel like comes with so much baggage, because if you're not in an environment that is supportive and that wants you to succeed in this, or that wants you to just like accomplish your dream and not just like a good dream. So if you just want to make art and you're like, my dream is just to feel good making art, I want to come home and just create art. Some people, they hear that and just like, you're wasting your time. You're not doing anything meaningful with your life. Like, do something that means something to the world. Like, leave your mark. But that is leaving your mark. What if you were just meant to make things, like to enjoy it? What if your life's hurdle, because of where you come from, is to learn how to enjoy the things that you do? What if life's that simple? So, being an artist is it's such a gift and such a challenge. And I know this doesn't just pertain to children's books or painting or anything like that. This can be anything. This can be writing. This can be it could be dance. It's anything that you put your heart into. It could be math. And it's like sometimes just being misunderstood and seen as like one dimensional, when it's like, no, I like art, but I also love music, and I also love sociology, and I also love elements of science and all of these different things, but I'm just expressing it through art, and giving yourself that room to be that person that is misunderstood, but you love you. And that's where I'm at. So I wanted to make this video because I don't think getting into illustration, I feel, looking back, hindsight 2020, was my biggest challenge in life. I think it was giving myself permission to fail was my biggest thing. Like, did I actually, all those other years I never tried or said like I can't do it, I was really just waiting for permission to say like, you can do it. Like someone had to literally tell me like, I can see you doing this. And that was my push. So now I'm looking now and I'm like, I need to be able to tell myself for this next season that I'm going into, I can do it. I can do that. So it's all internal. Like apart from like, opportunities coming because I've been in certain places and it's chance and opportunity and things I can't control. Yes, I know that. But apart from that, I never would have actually made any steps if I didn't have that affirmation. So the internal experience honestly can change how you experience the external as well. So that's those are just my hard truths and my hard reflections that I've had. If you've seen yourself in any of these things, I'd love to hear more of your thoughts in the comment section below, because this has been an ongoing dialogue I've had in my mind, in my world, in my sphere of influence, and just standing in who I am as a person and where I'm going. And so if these are any things you've thought about, any things you've challenged, any things you've heard, or just any musings that you have, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And see them down below if you relate, or if you'd like to see more videos like this. Definitely give this video a like so I can know that, hey, You guys like this, I'll make more stuff like this, and I'll definitely show up in that capacity a little bit more. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.